the platform has been at least drafted, I guess. I don't know how much of it is done. You're going to walk me through this process a little bit. But the platform committee has decided no Medicare for all. I don't know if we've seen the language yet in terms of like what they, I imagine it's something like expand and strengthen Obamacare.
I can pull it up if we need to.
And there is, at the very least, Sanders delegates are saying they're not going to vote for the Democratic platform. I mean, just put this in context. Like, I know in the past you've said, like, any concessions that Sanders gets on the platform is really not that big of a deal anyways, because the party doesn't follow it. But I think there is value to a platform. It takes a while, but I mean, if you go back and look at the Republican platform just from the state of Texas 15 years ago, you can see that there are instances where, this is a very much a leading indicator of where the party's going. 15 years ago, this stuff in Texas, they put these platforms out. It sounded like sheer insanity. And now it sounds like the mainstream of the Republican Party. So I think there is something to it. If not it being a causal connection, it may be at least a sense of where the party establishment is on something. But give me your take on it.
Well, I guess my response would be, in exchange for what? So again, this is a party that is controlled by special interests, like actually quite, the members of the platform committee are lobbyists. I mean, I'm saying all of them, but some of them that were appointed, many of them, most of them that were appointed are lobbyists and consultants and are in the industries in which they're trying to block this information, this platform from happening. But, I say it's theatrics, and I Jim Zogby, Dr. Zogby called me up last night, and he was a longtime DNC member and was on the executive committee, and we were on the Unity Reform Commission together, and he was on the last platform committee, and he's a big advocate, for Palestinian rights, and he was the first advocate in the DNC for this. And 35 years later, there's still no change. So while that might make some sense about where the party stands, we are opposed right now to the Republican Party that is like AIPAC has completely taken over the Republican Party and part of the Democratic Party. But we're talking about a right-wing Netanyahu. I mean, we understand what's going on here. And even then, the Democrats are still so beholden to these interests. So yes, in terms of like, okay, this is a reflection of what the Democratic Party is, but nobody, like we all know, we don't need like a platform. We don't need to exhaust everybody and exhaust political leverage on something that is just fundamentally meaningless. When I say I've been on the platform committee. It is exhausting. You have to write amendments and go and fight with these people who already have all the tricks to make sure that they win. They're not even willing to concede on a meaningless platform, but that's what they give us as a theatrical sort of way to excite us and make us feel involved. And like, okay, we'll throw them like a couple of platform pieces. But at the end of the day, the real change in the Democratic Party is in the Rules Committee, in which they've shut out all progressives. And that's where we get rid of the lobbyists in the Democratic Party. That's where we get rid of the chairman's ability to choose whoever they want to be on the Rules Committee, in which they're not elected. So the people deciding how the DNC functions, the rules of the Democratic Party, where the allocation of funds goes, where we invest our resources, all of these things, the people who decide that are chosen, not elected, by the DNC chair. So this platform committee, in 2016, it was beautiful, it was symbolic, but at the end of the day, I think all of us, and it was hard. It was very hard fought and embarrassing. I think for a lot of the Hillary platform committee members that really showed what kind of people they were on camera and with like all the social media around, but then also the Hillary supporters who were really embarrassed to be in a committee with people acting like that. And there were many platform committee members on the Hillary side that said, what do you mean you don't want to expand Social Security? What do you mean, you don't believe in protecting a worker's, right to a fair wage? That was not the party they signed up for. They wanted Hillary for other reasons. And then they saw the inner workings of the machinations of all of these consultants, just their hands in the pot of the Democratic Party. Because that's what this is. The DNC is a pot, and the people controlling the pot are the consultants that are appointed by Tom Perez. Does that make sense?
I mean, so if I hear you correctly, on some level, it provides some clarity to people who might have questions as to where, who's controlling at least the party apparatus. And on the other hand, that it would be nice to have a platform that called for these things, but it is maybe not. It's not necessary, and it's not necessarily worth the effort.
Yeah.
The real question is ultimately going to be like, what kind of legislation are we going to get? And I guess that's a function of, and I have no illusions. We're not going to get Medicare for all. But, the fact that there was no even like, we're going to expand Medicare to 55, or you can have a buy-in after 50, or just like, there doesn't seem to be anything. And it is, I think it's consistent with what I actually think it's less about the politics in the Democratic Party and more about this sort of like theory that we're going to give Donald Trump absolutely nothing to run against. Nothing. Even if that's popular, he's just not going to have anything to talk about. Like literally, like if they could put out a Democratic platform that is like, we're just gonna beat Donald Trump, and that was every single point on it, I think that's what they would put out at this point. And from an electoral standpoint, it's hard to argue with that. I mean, if someone was to come to me at this point and say, like, do you want Joe Biden out there carrying a banner for things that you believe in, or do you want him to stay in the basement and just not talk about anything? I would say the latter, because I'm not terribly thrilled with the banner that he's going to be carrying, but even if he did, like, I don't know that he would carry it very well. And like, the important thing is that we stench this bleeding at this point. The problem is that there is no, without an agenda, it becomes very hard for progressives and probably even the party on some level to sort of like take the next steps. And, maybe on some level it's an opportunity for progressives to sort of like step into the void. And I guess we'll have a sense of like how many votes, it won't be just they have 4 votes anymore. Maybe it's going to be they have 9 or 10 or 15. And then you start getting into numbers that you peel off a couple of, so-called moderates, you can hold up some bills in the House.
Well, also, if you think about it from the perspective of like the Tea Party and what they were able to do, this is a crisis of our time. The economy was a crisis for the Tea Party collapsing, and, whether it was justified or not, or the rights, they were correct. It was there. It was what stimulated them to organize locally and pressure and challenge moderates, but also pushed those moderates to the right on key issues. And I think you're going to see a lot of Democrats, and you're already sort of seeing it in the House, say things like, well, I don't understand. Why can't we support Medicare for all? We're in the middle of a pandemic. Like, at what point do we do this if we're not going to do it now? At what point do we go into and they know, of course, what the reasoning is. And it's of course, I mean, they're so transparent about it right now. Like you said, like, at least we are aware of who's controlling the Democratic Party. But let me just remind everybody, the platform means nothing because nobody runs on the platform. It doesn't mean anything. It's not even a symbol because it's not like we have a strong Democratic Party that is invested in every single state in America. Tom Perez's big push was, I'm giving states $10,000 to organize their parties. Years ago, it was like $150,000, $200,000 per state. So we don't have this like vibrant party that's organizing from the grassroots up that will use that platform as a tool to bring people in. And so, I mean, I just think it's a waste of time. And I actually think that Bernie like fell for it again. And I don't understand why. I just don't understand why. He could flex his muscle and his leverage in so many other ways right now. And that was not one to exercise that political leverage on.
And I think to a certain extent, there is an advantage in the narrative being like, nobody cares about the platform. This is an election where, it's clear that people just want to make it a referendum on Donald Trump. And then I guess the real question is like, what is the strategy? And do you have a sense that progressives are strategizing now on how they will, I mean, assuming there is a Democratic Senate, there's a Democratic House, and there's a Democratic president, are progressives now, and I'm talking about lawmakers, and maybe key outside groups, are they formulating a line of attack right now?
You mean on like the centrists once
I
centrists
mean,
take
yes,
over,
like,
like the establishment takes over?
yeah. I mean, obviously, Nancy Pelosi will be in a position to sort of set the agenda theoretically. I mean, I
Yeah.
think she had said she was going to step down after one term as the Speaker of the House, but who
Sure.
knows? But but is there? Do you have a sense that there are people out there? I mean, like, I don't know. Is AOC, talking to people and figuring out like this is how we're going to strategize, and this is how we're going to try and move the ball, and this is the area where we're going to hold, we're going to hold the line.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely hearing folks talk about this and starting new groups too. There's several new groups that have popped up in the last, I'd say, 6 months. Because I think Charles Booker showed everybody a lot of the cracks in the progressive, ecosystem, like strategy wise. Although people have been complaining about it for a while, it took somebody like Charles Booker, showing just what it would have taken if there were progressive infrastructure out there that supported candidates earlier. So on the electoral side, there's a lot of that strategizing happening. And I think, with that, part of that messaging is, okay, in order for us to move legislation, in order for us to push for Medicare for all, build this caucus, we, number one, have to influence lawmakers in Congress that might lean left, but are basically afraid of Nancy Pelosi. And I think the pandemic makes a really strong case for that. And then number two, we're going to primary you. And number three, she's yes, okay, there are 4 votes, and Nancy Pelosi is looking at it mathematically and through the power and the levers of Congress, the way that the DNC looks at it through, okay, well, we control the chessboard and you guys are just like outside actors that come
Right.
in. But AOC and all of the squad and all progressives, Ro Khanna, they have a megaphone, a very, very powerful megaphone and fundraising apparatus that now they can use their fundraising to invest in other candidates, invest in other causes, invest in organizing on the ground. I mean, this is real money. This isn't like joke money. This is not a couple $1 million every quarter. This is like AOC raising $9-10 million a quarter. Ro Khanna's chief of staff is starting his own fundraising organization to build another layer of progressive donors. We at Matrix are teaching our candidates how to fundraise because honestly, working class, I mean, it's just what it is. Nobody knows how to fundraise when they're running for office the first time. And that is, every candidate, every campaign that is strong is investing in that locality. Like you're building a pipeline. I can't tell you how many people have worked on one campaign and then run for office, or they'll go work, on an issue or start a firm in which they're helping other candidates. This is how you build that pipeline. And the DNC becoming centralized for the last 10 years really zapped that away and gave more power to Nancy Pelosi. So it's, I think that's kind of where the strategy is right now. I don't know what happens. I mean, legislatively, yeah. I don't think they have the numbers right now. And I think that's why they're really focusing on electoral politics.
Interesting.